Hey guys, and welcome to Little Black Book. You know what time it is? We're talking to you guys about Zach. I want to give you guys a breakdown as to why Zach is still in this relationship. I know many people have been asking me, to give a video on Zach and his issues and his problems, which I'm happy to do. And so I just had to go back over the last few episodes, break stuff down, give you examples. Now I can't actually bring the videos. Episode 15 for some reason doesn't seem to be picking up on any particular network. So you're just gonna have to hear me speak about it. But I will reference different episodes to tell you this is where you can find that particular piece of evidence. So if you're new to the channel, like it, share, subscribe, click on the bell button for notifications are uploads. And for those of you who are returnees, you got the minerals. You got the minerals. Stay hydrated. Why? Because the streets out there are hot. They're really hot. All right, cool. Let's get into the video. Talking to you about Zach and Michaela. If you haven't watched Married at First Sight, go watch it. But Zach and Michaela, we know that Michaela, for me, as I've said before from the very beginning, that she is abusive. It's that simple. Now, whether she's bipolar, whether she's got a condition, that's another story. Let the experts diagnose that person. But what we can see right now is abusive behavior. Simple, no argument. Now we've got Zach in the situation. And the problem we have with Zach here is that we said this from the beginning of the season. I was talking about Zach and his sorry about this consistent crying, right? And I said earlier on in the season, I said maybe it's my toxic masculinity, but to see him continually cry, problematic for me, right? And the reason why is because I said from the jump, he's in love with the idea of marriage. Now, when you actually hear him in episode 2 speaking about how he sees marriage happening, he says, I want to come home. There's a white picket fence. I want to come home, open the door. My wife says, hey, I love you. Da, 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 da. And I said, that's an idealism. And I said, that's a picture that really, that's not how marriage is really going to be going, bro. Like, if that's what you think, you've got a perfect picture of marriage in your head and it's going to be destroyed really, really quickly. Right. So I already knew from early jump he was an idealist. That's why when he was crying before he got to the altar, he was crying when they were in a hotel. He was listen, the Bible was crying a few times before we even got to the wedding, which was telling me he's in love with an idea. Because there's no need to be crying at these moments. We haven't even got nowhere. You don't even know who your wife is. So that means you're crying about the day and crying about the person who you don't know. You don't know them. I need you to actually deep what we're seeing here. Because at the beginning when we said this, I know a few women were kind of pushing back and saying men can show emotion. I said we can show emotion, but you crying at the fact that you haven't seen your wife, you're not at the wedding day just yet. Okay, you've only got to the hotel, and there was other times he was crying as well. And bruh, we're not there yet. Okay, we're not even there yet. You don't know who your wife is, and you're crying. There is no emotional attachment to the wife, which means if you're crying because you're attached to the idea, idealism. Okay. And the problem with idealism is it is a perfect match for perfectism, right? You want everything to be perfect, which is why when he described how he wanted to come into his wife being at home and he would open a door, blah, blah, blah. That was his perfect image, which is why later on, when he comes back from COVID, that was that perfect image. I've come back from my sickness, come home. I want to surprise her. And then Michaela's like, yeah. That was the summation of it, right? Beautiful. Then we have to move on from that particular aspect and then start to deal with the fact that he has self-worth issues. There's I think it's an anxious avoidant attachment issue, okay? And he's got an overprotective mum. Say it straight. All right, mama, if you're watching this, I love you, I appreciate you, but I got to talk about you, okay? Now, we saw from earlier on in the episode, and I said about this, the dynamics between the mother and the father. We said this on a live, right? And some people were getting on us and I was saying, you see, when you have a woman that is that dominating, and it looked dominating compared to our husband, I said, we got problems because you got boys, right? And they're going to see a dominating woman to a man, which is why I said he will replicate that with Michaela. And we were talking about the fact that he's going to want Michaela to lead before him, right? Because that level of emotion he's showing, he's showing right now, okay, it's going to cause him not to lead the relationship, but to be the one that's led. If you're always in your emotions, your woman can't be in her emotions. And am I saying that men don't have emotions? No, I'm saying we have time and we have season to show certain emotions. Because if you're calling yourself a leader, there is a time and a season to show emotion. I always give you this example. If you were at work and your boss kept on breaking down and you would say, oh, well, you got to let your boss have emotions. You wouldn't say that because you need to be led at that moment. You need to be led. You can't have your boss always crying at a time. So us as men, we can't be crying all the time, right? And I'm talking about open plain. Go and cry in your cupboard. No worries. Go and cry in the back. No problems. Am I saying you can't cry in front of your partner? No. We've done a video on this. You can, but it's a time in the season. That was important for me. Number two, okay, the mum, okay, like I said, was very fierce and strong. She was the one that was always talking. I said, yeah, that's a problem. I can imagine she's been overprotective of her son, and the way she spoke about Zach, and the way she was even giving looks at Michaela when she first entered. I said, this mum has protected him a bit too much. I think she's protected him too much. I think Mama Bear has been overly protective, like Miles' mum from last two seasons we saw, same kind of thing, that overprotectiveness. So it's made him of a softer nature. And the problem with that was the woman he was coming into conjunction with was called Hurricane K, right? At this point, none of us thought she was going to be abusive, but we did think she's going to run his roost, right? She's going to run the roost. And so we've got Hurricane K at this point thinking she's going to run the roost. And then we've seen, obviously, Zach, right? And we're thinking, okay, she's going to end up leading him all the way, and he's going to have a replicated relationship like his mum and his dad, seemingly. Okay, right? And this is important because I think the overprotective mum has also made him conflict avoidant. Okay, because the mum has been so assertive, and I'm not blaming the woman, by the way. I'm talking about the dynamic, because remember, now she's leader. If she's been so assertive, the husband doesn't become that assertive in order to keep the peace. But now we've got a young man called Zach, who's also conflict avoidant. That comes from somewhere. That comes from what you've seen with your parents. That comes with what you haven't seen with your parents. That comes with the way that you've been reared. That comes with the way that you've been, what level of affection and love you've been given by your parents. Okay. And Zach is conflict avoidant, right? Some of it's nature, some of it's nurturing. Okay. Now that conflict avoidant is very important, because when you get into scenarios where someone is a conflict, who's willing to be in conflict, your response to that conflict is now going to be in question. Because are you going to stand your ground? Are you going to say something? Or are you going to want to back away? Are you going to suddenly go quiet? Are you going to suddenly not want to be involved anymore? Conflict avoidant people tend to move away from conflict. That's why they call conflict avoidant, right? And what did he experience in that relationship with Michaela? All types of conflict, okay? And I'm building up a picture because I want you to understand the kind of person Zach is. I need to build up this background, okay? Then we also have with Zach, we have the situation where he's been in several relationships where he's been in abusive relationships. And the reason why you end up oftentimes people end up in several abusive relationships, it is a self-esteem issue. That's where the accountability lies with you and me, because I've been in an abusive relationship, so I know. Listen, that's where you take accountability for your self-esteem issues. Am I blaming you for being abused? Nope. I'm saying we take accountability for why we end up in certain situations. Okay? All right? Because we have to be able to put up certain boundaries. And that self-esteem issue oftentimes comes as well with people-pleasing tendencies. I don't know if I see that with him, but I definitely see self-esteem issues. Here's an example. If you go back and watch episode 2, when he's getting his suit, when he's talking to his boys in the mirror, he says, "Oh, I struggle with self-worth." He struggles, basically saying that he struggles with self-worth. And I said, And then we see in episode 3 where they're getting married, where they've got married, sorry, and then is it episode 3 or episode 4, when they're talking at their wedding, and he talks about being bullied for his color, right? And him being bullied, again, is going to affect the self-esteem issue, right? Now, listen, those people have been bullied before, right? But again, the tying here is that your self-esteem comes into question. How do you value yourself? How do you esteem yourself? What worth do you put on yourself? Because that ends up pushing you towards those. You see, people who are abusers, they are hunting and they are smelling blood. The same way men who try to get, and I would say men who are manipulative, who are almost, you can class them as abusive if you want to call it that. Men who want to get women so they can cheat on them and use them and abuse them and just keep them in their back pocket, basically. I'm not talking about physical abuse or anything like that. Just the fact that you can cheat on them and treat them as bad as you want. Them man hunt them type of gal, you know. Them man that do that thing consistently, they hunt them type of women. They smell their blood. They look at them, lack of confidence, lack of self-esteem. Okay, she thinks I'm a god. Okay, fantastic, cool. She's gonna be what I'm gonna use as a victim. The same way they're seeing that, are the same way women will also see men as probable candidates for their victimhood, right? So Zach's self-esteem is a big issue, massive issue, big time. As to why you stay in those situations long as you do. Now, in this situation, he tried to get out on several occasions, but he kept on coming back. Now, I'm going to say the same thing I said to Paige last season, which is they don't tell you to go back into a relationship. They say you got to film, but you got to film separately. You don't have to be in the same situation. We had Brett was it Brett or whatever his name is, and Olivia situation. He's separated. You just have to film from where you are. You don't have to film with the person. So there is the reason why they went back is because they wanted to go back. Why Paige and Zach went back? Because they wanted to go back. When you fall in love with toxicity, when you falling in love with toxicity is because it's been normalized in your household, it's been normalized in your environment, or you've got major self-esteem issues where you think that this is all that you deserve. You don't think you deserve any better. You haven't seen a better picture of what you actually deserve. You know what I'm saying? Right? So same thing with Zach here. What have you seen? What have you experienced? Because you've been in several, as you said yourself, relationships where you've been in abusive positions. This is because of self-esteem issues. If it's several, you've got to look at yourself. There's a pattern that's happening. You don't have good boundaries, right? Overly emotional. I'm going to say it, sorry. Overly emotional. If you're always crying, how can you see? You're always crying. You know what I'm saying? If your response to conflict is always to run, you'll find yourself in these situations. Because like I said, those type of people are looking for people like you. They're hunting for you. And unfortunately, the show did you dirty by putting you somebody who experienced the same thing. Now, here's the thing, he's also got a lack of ability to fully communicate. Now, this is not to do with the abuse. This is him. Okay? This is him. He's a lack of ability to communicate how he actually feels and able to tell you what he feels is a him problem, not an abuse problem. It's a him problem. Okay, that also contributes to the double speaking, right? The double speaking that he does, okay, is because part of he's confused during being in an abusive relationship. Yep, that's true. But the other part is when people double speak, is oftentimes because they easily get confused when they're not sure 100% what they want, right? Look, when you're not strong in your vision, you're not strong in what you actually want, you end up double speaking because you're not 100% sure of what you actually really want. What does Zach actually want? This is where I only agreed with Dr. Viviana when she said about when you ask Zach, what does he really want when he's talking to Michaela? He don't know because he doesn't actually really know in life in general. Now, listen, if you ask Zach, he might have to tell you, but he doesn't really know what he really wants. And when you don't really know what you want, you can end up in situations like this a lot because you don't really know what you really need. Sorry, not even want. When you don't know what you really need, you end up in situations like this consistently with people like this because you don't know what you actually need to make it work for you. You're just taking whatever comes. You're just taking whatever comes, right? So, and here's the thing: you've got to be in a situation regularly. You've got to love the toxicity. I'm sorry to say it, you love the toxicity because you've normalized it, and Zach has normalized it. In episode, I think 7 or 8, where he's talking to Michaela, sitting down at the table when they're discussing about how do you get jealous, and when he mentions about how do you get jealous, she says, "Oh, I'm possessive," and he says in the cutscene, "I love possessiveness because it means you really care." And I said, "No. That's not true." I said, "You're going to be in trouble when you keep saying that. Because when you say possessive, that person is not talking about, even territorial is a better word than possessive. Possessive meaning you're my possession. I own you. To do that is a negative." And Zach doing that, Zach agreeing and saying, "I like possessiveness," is all I needed to know, that you like toxicity. So you're in the toxicity. and you're enjoying it. Am I saying that that's what you actually want? No, but I'm saying you've normalized it to a point that I can't remember what it's actually called. There's a term for this where people are become familiar with this type of scenarios, um, and it becomes part of they reenact these kind of things. They reenact. It's called intermittent reinforce. No, that's not the word. That's not the word. So apologies, it's not the right word. I thought I had it in my notes, but I don't. But they reenact basically the past situations because they're so normalized that it needs to be part of the situation. I remember when I was younger, right? I used to say, I need a girl that's going to give me fire. I need that argumentative thing because I'm an argumentative person. I've seen my daddy's debate, but we like to debate too, etc. But it gets to a point where I like to go that I needed a bit of the argument. I needed a fight. And then, and then I'll be happy because I need to have that. That's toxic. Why do I need to have a fight? I need to have that feeling of being desired. That is what I was. Then I started realizing that's a problem, coach. Go on the bench and heal. Go and sit on the bench and heal. Why do you need your partner to argue with you, right? You fall out and then make it back again because you want to feel like you're loved and cared for. That's toxic. And that comes from emotional deficiencies, right? That was proof to me when we get back together that you actually want me. Do you know how mad that is? That's toxic. Call it what you want. You can't cover it. It's dysfunctional. It's toxic. And Zach had the same issue here that he wanted an argument. He wanted toxicity. This is why I said I'm not saying that he even caused it. It's not about him causing it. It's about him liking it. Right. For instance, when they sat down just before that scene where he says about possessiveness, they had a conversation about how would you behave if like an argument's like how do you argue? And she said, if I leave, that's abusive. In that same segment, he actually said, I can't wait for us to have the first argument and see what I want. Now, let me be honest with you. Of course, I'm always intrigued to find out what will we argue about because we're so good. You've been in a relationship, you're like, we're so good together. I wonder what we'd argue about. But I ain't about to tell you. I ain't about to say it out loud. Right? I'm not trying to give you ideas, but it does run through your head. Like, I wonder what we're so good. Like, I wonder what we could argue about. It's mad. Like, but he looked genuinely excited about. I can't wait for us to have our first argument. What? No, I can wait. No, I can wait. Okay, I can wait. I don't want to have an argument, right? But I can wait. I'm not trying to find out what I want for you for an argument, right? Now, I think we should have arguments because obviously, relationships, they're normal. They're part of relationships to a degree. But he was excited about it. And I said, nah, you like toxicity, bro. And I did that in my review at the time. And many people didn't see that part of the review. Again, I wonder why. But I said that at the time. I said those things show us that you like this toxicity. Do you get what I'm saying? So Zach's got problems there, right? Let's move on. Like, let's go to my next point, right? And say this, like, the reason why you stay in these type of situations or these type of relationships, Zach keeps coming back. Like, we're asking the question, why does Zach keep coming back? He's coming back because he's normalized toxicity. And also, as well, a lot of times these people have what we call salvational mindsets, Superman complexes, where you want to save the other person, where you're thinking your goodness can save them. You know what I'm saying? Where you're thinking, if I be good, they'll be good. That's part of it, right? I'm taking out the cycle of abuse, which we'll deal with in another video, because that's also part of why people keep coming back. Okay, intermittent reinforcement that happens to people, but we'll come back. That's another part of the video. But for Zach himself, he keeps coming back because there is an aspect of that he likes of this relationship, and it's not necessarily the sex. The sex is actually a part of the cycle of abuse, if you don't know, because the sex is what sells the honeymoon phase. Now, I'm not saying that even having sex. I know people said about he wants the bedroom, he wants to be in a bed, and they're having sex. We can't guarantee that, but I see what you're saying, but we can't guarantee that. That we're insinuating big time. Right, we're in cinema big time, but I can see why you're saying that. The issue that we have here is that he likes this situation. He likes parts of this situation. Some parts of it feels normal and familiar, and Zach wants to be able to prove his perfectionism right. He wants to prove his idealism right. He doesn't want to quit on his idea of marriage and the idealism that he's built up. If he quits the marriage now, he's failed. And it's like, I'm doing everything I can to make sure I don't fail. I don't have no regrets. But the problem with that is you coming back into abusive relationship. And sometimes when you're in an abusive relationship, you can almost lie to yourself and say, I don't think it was that bad. Because there are good moments of that person, which what makes it difficult. So Zach's got his own major problems here. He can double speak. Yes, he's even petty at points in time and do tit for tat at some degree, which I pointed out in the episode where they were talking about the bedroom, where he didn't want to sleep in the bed and he wanted to leave because she didn't want him to sleep in the bed. Right? There are tit for tat issues there. There are passive aggressive movements, which I mentioned in episode 2. I said if he's crying so much and being so emotional, he's going to be passive aggressive. He's always going to be passive aggressive. He's not going to be direct. People who cry like that don't become direct. They don't. They become passive aggressive. And that comes from a lack of ability to be able to communicate. So I'm going to leave it there. That's part 1 of our video about Zach and Michaela. I hope you liked the video. Stay liked, stay shared, and subscribe. Stay liked, stay shared. Like, share, subscribe, click on that bell button for notification uploads. We appreciate you guys. Stay locked and stay loaded.
Little black book. You know what time it is.